I've done my own research. When I first started, and I was in the military, and I started reading Rampa stuff. Love saying Rampa.
Oh yeah,
stuff.
the Rampa.
Yeah, and I started reading You Forever and stuff, and it made a lot of sense. Again, he wasn't preachy. He took a very metaphysical approach, and I like that. And it makes a lot of sense to me. How do we? Is the reason why we don't know because we don't have to know or?
Oh, you have great questions. I love a good interviewer. No, it's true. You're asking some intelligent questions.
Thank you.
I think, here's the thing. There are two parts to the human being, and we do live in a dualistic universe, although that's actually an illusion too. But we assume that we do. Our perception of reality is such that we live in this dualistic life, right? So we have the mind, the small mind, which is to do with our ego self, and the self that identifies ourselves as separate and unique beings. And that's important because we have to have that, right? It gets us a lot into trouble when we think that's the only reality, right? So
exactly.
We all know when we are in an alignment with a higher power. We know this. We sense it. It is when everything falls into place, when synchronicity comes, and even when within our deepest, darkest moments of I'll call it the dark night of the ego rather than the dark night of the soul, right, where we hit bottom when we surrender, and all of a sudden there is some kind of extraordinary aha moment where even our suffering makes sense and there is meaning in it. So there is a higher experience that we have of life. So, I think that the mortal self is not equipped to know these things and would probably, and it doesn't want to either because it will shatter its illusion of it being the center of the universe. Right?
Huh.
The ego's the ego's afraid, or the small self is afraid of its own mortality, and it doesn't want to know that it's going to disappear amongst millions of other. Do you know what I'm saying? That's not important anymore. You know what I mean? So
sure.
I think the answer is that we aren't. Part of us is completely ill-equipped, nor does it want to. We are trained to believe all kinds of superstitious, supernatural hoo-ha.
Right.
Which is not any of our fault because everything that any of us learned comes from a source where they also tried to explain things, and then it gets trickled down. So
it gets trickled down. Sometimes it gets manipulated because, knowing what you know and knowing, the depth of what you know, Colette, is dangerous to society sometimes when you realize what I call your position. In your book, in your new book, Messages from the Spirit, in the Children of Divine section, you write something that says, we are all sons and daughters of God. And I would call that your position. I always say that there's a battle between
my
position and condition. And a lot of people think they are their condition. And they're trained to think that way. You know what, I'm broke. No, you're not. I'm this, I'm that. And they forget that they are that child or son or daughter of God or the universe, and they are the great sculptor. And it's dangerous to a society, a controlled society, when people know that what you know, Colette. So a lot of times.
Well, here's the thing. I'm going to interrupt you for 2 seconds because it's important that when you say that I know what I know, because I don't know more than, I'm an expert in my field to the degree that I am, but in so saying that I know less and less. The more I get into this, the more I know I don't know, right?
Well, that's
because
what
I'm always
mean.
Learning.
The most important thing to know is that you don't know, and you know this.
But what's really key to what you just said is that we live right now. Say, for example, with this war on terror. I can apply this to our common life right now, and we are invested in this concept that we are, absolutely at war and separate from someone else who also believes that, both parties are saying the others are infidels, right? So, and we have loss of lives to prove it.
Sure.
But that, I'm a believer of inclusive spirituality. Which is why I think that, religious dogma is sometimes difficult to. Unless it includes everybody, it's very difficult because it ends up separating us. And I think that's a huge issue that we're facing right now. Given that we are becoming much more of a global civilization, we still have these really, really, really tough things to deal with.
Right.
And so we have to live in both places. We have to know what we know and accept that this is part of our learning. And that we, like you started the show beautifully by saying that, do something, one thing, text someone, send some love, even because we can only do it in a small way. We can't, and if each one of us does that one small thing, it makes such a huge difference.
It really does. It's a
it
tremendous
really
difference. I get tons of messages from people that are like, hey, you know what? It was so nice that you sent me this text, or my friend sent me this text, and now I'm doing it. It spreads infectious enthusiasm to do the same thing. And I think that it's vital because it's something that we don't do. It's not, we're so busy doing other things and complaining about how things should be that we forget that we can participate in making it so.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm a very urban person, and I've moved to Arizona and to Sedona. I came from Toronto originally. I'm a Canadian, and I got a U.S. visa. And I've never been used to looking out the window and seeing bunny rabbits and quail and things like that. And it's actually the natural world here that has just been absolutely the most extraordinary experience for me. As I remember that, in fact, in these really quick-paced urban environments, we forget that there's this extraordinary natural world that that is out there that we are really a part of, because we do forget what we're doing here because we're busy, right?
Right.
We're so busy.
You're absolutely. We keep so busy, and that's how you start to begin to think that you become your condition.
And fear. I think fear is also, in my in this book. I mean, my first book, I talk a lot about those things, about the character flaws, and also how to develop intuition is really about focusing on kindness and humility and moving through fear and forgiveness and those things that have nothing to do with sitting around and doing metaphysical exercises. It has to do with really cleaning out your heart and your head. And I maintain that as a starting point. In this book, I talk about the One God Club, and again, using it not in religious terms, just talking about inclusive spirituality and also remembering what our intentions are. There's nothing wrong with being busy as long as we have an intention to serve. That's the other thing. And it isn't just about being self-serving all the time. And that's the thing. I think if all of us just think for 1 second,
right.
What about being other-centered for a little while? What can we do for someone else? Just one random act of kindness or one anonymous kind action. And all of a sudden, I'll tell you that is a key to your intuition. Your psychic abilities just go, woohoo!
You're absolutely right.